evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining tonight. Welcome to the Ontario Caregiver Organization's webinar series. These webinars bring together caregivers and subject matter experts to explore topics of interest to caregivers. We do this to support an engaged chosen family, friends, and neighbors who are caring for someone. I'm Felicia Hart, Program and Service Lead for Workplace and Helpline at the OCO, and I'm also a working caregiver. Today, I will be your moderator as we work through some tips and strategies for better balancing work and care. But firstly, we begin today's session by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands we are on today. I personally am coming to you from Clarington, Ontario, which is situated within the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas and Chippewa of the Anishinaabe, known today as the William Treaties First Nations. I came to be here through generations of immigration to this land. At the OCO, we are working to better understand how we can be meaningful allies and support the recommendations from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. If you haven't already, after today's session, I encourage you to learn more about the Indigenous peoples and treaties for the land you live and work on through the chat at nativeland.ca. So our webinar today is called Balancing Work and Care, Finding Strategies that Work for You. I would really like to introduce my co-presenter this evening, Carla Velastigio. Carla is a caregiver for her mother who was diagnosed with early onset Parkinson's disease over 14 years ago. She is passionate about increasing the awareness of young caregivers' important role and contributions to our healthcare system, economy, and local communities. Carla is also a health technology professional with experience in the private and public sector, along with early stage companies focused on making healthcare more equitable and accessible for all Canadians. So welcome, Carla. So Carla and I will be working together both as working caregivers and trying to balance our careers and the needs of those that we care for in our lives. And we're going to do that by walking through some content with you. And we're going to have some time for Q&A and some reflection pauses as well tonight. So I hope everyone's comfortable and you've got your favorite beverage or snack and you can just really enjoy tonight's session. So you're going to hear from Carla directly in a few moments, who's going to share more about her experience of balancing work and care. We're also going to review some ideas for how you yourself can build your support network. We know that many caregivers are so focused on caring for others that they forget about their own care team. You're also going to gain access to the OCO's Working Caregiving, a Balancing Act Toolkit. And this is what I'm going to use to walk through some of those strategies with Carla. And of course, I'm sure we're going to hear a lot of comments and questions from you later today too. If you've tried some of this, maybe you can share what's worked for you. And then of course, we're going to look at how we can truly balance demands within the workplace after we look at how we can support ourselves within our personal lives. So that's what you can count on from us today. Now, just to get started, though, I know for some it may have been a while or, since you've really heard more about what the OCO is doing. Maybe you're brand new to OCO and this could be your very first touch point with us. So I just wanted to make sure we're on the same page regarding what we do at our organization. So the Ontario Caregiver Organization, or OCO, as you'll hear me refer to it, we exist to improve the lives of Ontario's caregivers. So all Ontario's caregivers who are ordinary people providing physical and emotional support to a family member, partner, friend, or even neighbor. And we do that by ensuring that caregivers remain our key focus in everything that we do and assist us in building any supports that we have in place. Programs, services, resources are all built alongside caregivers across the province. We also work with other community service providers, other organizations to ensure that caregivers are going to get what they need for them. And also sometimes that means how they can access things for the care recipient too. So what is the experience right now across the province for caregivers? Luckily, at the OCO, we have the opportunity to do a yearly spotlight report. And this gives us insights into what's going on for caregivers across Ontario. We know that we've got 4 million caregivers across our province and that they're in every age group. For the purposes of today, as you look at the age groups on the screen there, I think you'll notice that the far majority are between the ages of 26 and 64. So when we think about the impact of that within our workforce in the province, That could be potentially your entire career that you could be a caregiver, or at some point within your career, as you're building all your skills and knowledge within the workforce, you may be caring for someone in your life. We've also seen in recent years that there is a more even split between female and male caregivers. So female caregivers 51%, male 48, and 1% reporting as non-binary caregivers. And 64% of those 4 million are employed. So if you ever have felt alone as a working caregiver, I hope after today that you don't, that you know that there is a large majority of people in our province who are balancing something similar, going through some similar experiences. Everyone's experience and life is unique, of course, but I hope after today you could take away the fact that you're not the only one trying to balance both worlds. The other piece that's really important to recognize is the contributions that caregivers make within our society, families, everywhere, right? We know that a third of caregivers do actually provide more than 10 hours of care per week. And so it can start to feel like you have a second job, right? If caregivers were paid the equivalent of Ontario's current minimum wage, their economic contributions would range from anywhere from $26 to $72 billion a year. And that information came through from the Change Foundation. So we know that as caregivers, you are making a profound impact on the person that you care for, but also the society at large. And I think it's really important to pause and recognize that contribution. When we narrow in on the working caregiver experience specifically, what are people telling us? We know that more than half of caregivers who are balancing both report that they have really hit a breaking point, especially within the last couple of years. Everyone's been through a lot. So when you add caregiving on top of that and juggling both, it can be really challenging. And we know that almost half of working caregivers say, yeah, I do find this stressful on a regular basis. I'm really finding it hard. The other piece that can be tough for people is that 1 in 3 are actually really worried about losing their job right now. So sometimes there could be a lot of pressure on caregivers thinking, am I giving enough to my work? Am I giving enough to the person that I care for? And that's really hard because you want to show up, you want to be your best self in both places. But unfortunately, that guilt, that fear can lead to excess stress there. And we know that about 10% report that they actually turn down job opportunities. So perhaps there's a promotion available or something that they could apply for or an opportunity that comes up. A lot of caregivers are saying, I'm sorry, but I just can't make that happen because I'm already feeling maxed out. I don't know how to move forward in my career right now while I'm balancing caregiving. We also hear that many caregivers have been concerned as we see things change regarding COVID and how it affects our workplaces. Some people never left the workforce, right? There are jobs that you can't work from home. You don't have that type of flexibility. But for those who were able to maybe do some work from home or different locations, some found it really helpful as they were balancing their caregiving needs. And now moving back to the workforce is challenging for two reasons. You can lose some flexibility, but also what if you do, contract something, whether it's COVID or another virus or illness, and bring that back to the person you're caring for. Others, of course, have said that they do want a physical space to go to for work so they can actually have a boundary between work and home. And we know that over 40% of caregivers are saying that their mental health, unfortunately, is worse when they compare it to a year ago. So that's really something that we want to try and support and try to find the right resources for you. And this one always strikes me. Over 70% of working caregivers are currently making alterations to their employment. So this can look different for everybody, but some examples are perhaps an early phased retirement that they didn't plan on, going down to part-time, or changing jobs or careers entirely. And I know Carla is going to tell us a little bit about that in her experience too. But one thing that I want to do is kind of go back to that contribution of caregivers as well, right? So we talked a little bit about that a moment ago. But when this work was just getting off the ground, I mentioned that OCO does work closely with other caregivers. And Carrie, who was a part of the initial working caregiver group, said that don't forget all of those valuable skills, knowledge, expertise that comes along with caregiving. And so if you think about the resilience that caregiving can teach you, how you can adapt to different situations on the fly, right? You don't always get a heads up that things are moving, things are changing. You also learn to be flexible and have really good judgment. So of course, Recognize that within yourself sometimes too, like all the skills that are coming from this and what that can mean for your work, for your career, how that all translates, and celebrate that a little bit. So now I'm going to invite Carla to come on camera and join us. She's going to share her personal experience. From there, Carla and I will work through some of our key tips and strategies. Carla.
Thank you, Felicia. Hi, everyone. Good evening. It's an honor for me to be here. My name is Carla, and I'm a caregiver for my mother, who was diagnosed with early onset Parkinson's disease. I have been an advocate for her in the healthcare system for about 14 years and actively progressing in my career for the past 10 years. And so, during the course of the discussion today, I hope to be able to share some specific examples of how I've navigated my career through different sectors and roles while also caring for my loved one at home. And before I start, I also want to acknowledge that I'm aware I have certain privileges due to my profession and the sector that I'm currently in. And that might not be the case for everyone. I think each experience of caregivers is unique. But I hope that some of the topics and some of the personal experiences that I will share today will help. And of course, more than happy to answer any questions during the Q&A session. So, as Felicia shared, I'm a health technology professional with experience in the private, the public sector, along with early stage companies in Canada. And as I've navigated through these experiences, I want to start by sharing that it's never a 50-50 balance. There is an ever evolving change occurring to our loved ones' health conditions and needs. And in turn, I'm continuously redefining what does that balance look like for me. So some days might be heavier focus on work, while other days I might have to I might have to wrap up my day a bit earlier to take my mother to an appointment. But in turn, knowing that I will be able to work a few extra hours the next day, and again, remind myself that it's a balance. It's never going to be 50-50, but it's an ongoing working balance. So I want to share with you some of the ways that I've navigated my career and even finding a workplace fit for myself as a caregiver. As throughout the evolution of my mother's condition and even my own changing interests, my career has also shifted to find workplaces that better fit my needs. And while I really enjoyed certain steps in my career, sometimes the policies, work-life balance, or the structure just didn't really fit my changing needs. And I just want to remind us all that that is okay. So if you're ever feeling stretched, don't be afraid to look outside of the box, whether it's changing sectors or industries. Really take a step back and look at how your professional skill set, and I want to remind you as well, your caregiver skills can be transferred into a new opportunity for you that will better fit your needs. So for me, sharing from previous experiences, I think it's been really important to identify employers that are committed to creating a culture that supports caregivers in a space where I can feel safe coming forward and sharing that I am a caregiver, and in turn might need certain flexibility to be able to be successful in the workspace. So when it came to that, when I started interviewing or looking for places, I would look at websites like Glassdoor or Indeed to read previous employer reviews and even see if there's anything related to caregiving supports or even just work-life balance or leaves. Now, when it came to having compensation discussions, for me, it's become really important to have a discussion past things just like pay. So now I explore things like time off policy. What does this look like? Are there personal days? Are there sick days available? Are there caregiver days? And I think it's extremely important to have those conversations at the beginning before you're entering a new workspace. Something else as well that I think is really important to understand is are there leaves of absence available, and whether this is paid or unpaid, and what does that look like to be able to explore those routes if that situation ever came in place. Lastly, something that I've been seeing a lot more coming into the workspace is employing assistance programs. So these are usually programs offered by employers, and there are services like healthcare navigation supports, time management tools, mental health supports. And the really great thing about these services is that they're often online or can also be accessed via telephone call. And so it might make it easier for a caregiver to manage this rather than an in-person appointment, or even work as a starting point to know really what is out there and feel a bit more supported in your journey as a caregiver. Another thing as well that I want to share here, and I think we saw a huge shift with COVID, has been the abilities of being able to work from wherever you feel empowered. Personally, for myself, I find that working remotely, so working from home, has facilitated my abilities to be a caregiver with my mother at home, be able to be more involved with her day-to-day care. However, I'm aware that for some people, actually going into the office provides a break from caregiving. So I think it's just really important to understand what are your needs and what will actually fit you, and then look for those opportunities. Now, um, I want to share a little bit more about, as a caregiver, communicating your needs and really the importance of self-advocacy. So I think as caregivers, we are great at advocating for our loved ones. But when it comes to advocating for ourselves, we're not the greatest. And so I always have to remind myself that my ability to thrive in my personal, in my professional life outside of just my caregiver is just as important as my loved one's health. So it's really important for me to advocate and share that with those around me. What that looks like for me at work is being transparent about what my caregiver role entails and any specific work related challenges that I come across. So something that I've learned throughout my own experiences and even through different managers that I've had, and I'm extremely lucky now with my current manager, is that your supervisors and managers really cannot empathize or respond to the challenges that you're facing unless they know what you're experiencing. So it's extremely important to be clear about what you're going through, and in turn, also about what things can help you perform better at work, and come with some realistic options and realistic things that you would like to try out. So whether, for example, that's taking lunch at a different time to be able to help out with meal prep or with um, activities of daily living for your loved one, or if, for example, starting your day earlier so that you can drive your loved one to an appointment in the afternoon. I think it's just really taking some time to understand what are those things that you need to help you to be successful in the workspace, and then bringing those forward. And it's really about a discussion with your team and with your manager to figure out what can work for both parties, and in turn, what will allow you to be successful in your career in your current workspace. And now I think something that we as caregivers also tend to forget sometimes is we focus on building the care team for a loved one, but it's extremely important for us to also build our own support group. And so what I mean by this is sometimes I know caregiving can be extremely lonely, and it might feel like you don't have a lot of options out there. And I go through the cycle myself where I say, well, if it's not me who's doing this, then who's going to do it? Or will they even know how to do it? But I think it's really important to be flexible in your thinking and flexible about what you can accomplish and what are things that you can put in someone else's hands that they can help you accomplish. So, for example, for me, what does look like was actually connecting with my mother's healthcare providers and her home care coordinator, and just sharing that my needs are really on focus on being able to receive larger chunks of time for home care, such that I would be able to get focus time for work, rather than maybe just distributed hours throughout the week. And so just having through those discussions, I've now been able to arrange a system such that I have individuals coming in to support my mother in the mornings. It gives me that mental space to completely focus on work. And in turn, I know that my mother is getting the supports and care that she needs at home. So I think it's really important to kind of take the step back and then get creative. What are those things that you need help with, and what are things that you can free up that will allow you to focus at work. Um, Another thing as well is just sometimes it's just little changes in our day to day. So, for example, for me, lunchtime preparation can sometimes be stressful when meetings are running late, or when I need to wrap up something and I might not necessarily be able to feed my mother right on time for when she needs to take her medications. And so I actually found a service that just where I can pick up ready-made soups. That way I'm able to quickly warm them up on the stove. 10 minutes maybe it might take me, and I make sure that she's eating a nutritious meal. And in that way, I have now completely removed the stress of lunchtime preparation while also trying to focus on my work and being flexible to the needs of my workspace as well. And lastly, and something that I see a lot more, and I think is extremely helpful, and we've seen that big shift again due to COVID, is finding communities. And whether this is a community online on Facebook or in your neighborhood, but really being able to share your story, get support, connect with other caregivers. And again, just remind yourself that you're not the only ones going through this. At least for myself, it's really changed my way of how I feel going through caregiving and not feeling so alone. And I think last but not least, I think it's extremely important for us as caregivers in the workspace to make our voices heard. What I mean by this is when I first started my career, and even just a few years ago, I used to be extremely hesitant to share that I'm a caregiver. And I would think, well, what can my employer actually do to support me? Or will there be any repercussions in place? But I found that keeping my caregiver obligations secret at work actually added to my stress and in turn impacted my performance, my mental health, and my ability to actually um, come through as who I am in the workspace. And so I decided to start sharing and I started to start speaking up and really with the goal of changing the status quo. I bet you that you're not one in a thousand in your workspace who's the only caregiver. As through my own personal experience, I've been finding that there are so many individuals out there, whether it's in my workspace or friends or local community, that are caregivers and that are going through similar experiences. So I found that by sharing my own personal experience, people are also opening up with me, and we're realizing that we're all going through relatively similar challenges while being working caregivers. So I would recommend, I think it's really important to share and speak up about that. The other thing as well that we see, and the pandemic changed a lot of things in our professional and personal lives. I think a big part was the shift of more and more people are realizing that there is a need for better work-life balance and flexibility that allows people to work wherever they feel more empowered. Specifically in the context of caregivers, I see a lot more conversation happening around investing in care infrastructure for aging population. And I wanted to remind us all that we here as caregivers need to open up the conversation at the employer level to start the planning and put in place the appropriate supports for people in their caregiver duties to be able to be successful and empowered at work. Adding a layer to that, there's also a big shift towards diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I want to remind us all that caregiver falls under this category. Adding on to that, a gender lens, we primarily see that women are individuals who are taking the caregiver role in their families. And so once again, I think it's extremely important for us as caregivers to speak up, talk about some of the needs that we need, and also just increase awareness that we are out there in the workspace. We are very active in our societies and in our workplaces. And so there needs to be a shift towards more caregiver-centric workplaces. Last but not least, the other things that I want to share here as well is that I know sometimes coming in certain workspaces, there might not necessarily be policies in place or practices to support you, but this is actually a great opportunity for you to be able to start the conversation. And even if it's going on a case by case basis, I think it's great for you to start sharing those your needs, sharing ideas, sharing realistic ways and practices that can be put in place to better support caregivers. And again, it's really being part of that necessary shift towards caregiver centric workplaces. And as I'm wrapping up, and I think something that I've learned and I'm realizing from my own personal experience as well is that there is a benefit to employers in working with you to figure out better ways to support you and reduce burnout. So whether it's flexible work arrangements or short-term leave or caregiver days, employers benefit here as well in retaining your skill set, your experience, and your future goals with the company. There's a benefit here to employers because when an individual leaves because they feel that they can't balance work and caregiving, there is a cost to whether it's recruiting and training new individuals and a pressure on existing teams. So once again, opening those conversations in the workplace, it's a win-win. And as I wrap up my thoughts here, I just wanted to share a quote by Rosalind Carter that I found extremely applicable to myself and even those around me. There are only four kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need a caregiver. So again, I just want to remind you that you are not alone. There are so many caregivers out in the workspace, and I think it's important that we speak out and that we find places that are really there to support us and allow us to be successful in the workplace as well as in our family lives.
Carla, wow, thank you so much. That's amazing. I absolutely love that quote. And Just as I sit here listening to your experience, the tips that you've already put forward, how you really worked through like getting into your career and finding that space for you, so incredibly helpful. And I'm seeing in the chat that a lot of caregivers are saying the same thing. I was sitting over here just nodding, and you've really empowered me and inspired me tonight too, thinking about some other ideas as well. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I know that people are sharing their experiences in the chat too. Keep it coming. This is amazing. As Carla mentioned, even just having the opportunity to share with one another. We may not have all the answers, but being able to share like that is incredibly powerful. So you haven't heard the last of Carla. We're going to work together as we go through our session today. Bear with me here. And so I think this is a really great time, like all the amazing information Carla's put forward. And before we get into kind of looking at some other ideas too, let's take a minute, like it's our evening. I'm sure we've all had really busy days. Let's just take a moment to reflect. And I know some of you have already started doing that. But you can just think to yourself, maybe jot a note down, or if you feel comfortable, share it in the chat. What are some of the tasks, as you think through your experience right now as a caregiver, balancing work, what are some things that you need help with? And then on the other side of that, who in your life has said, I'm here if you need me. Let me know how I can help. Who are those people? Maybe you never asked them because you didn't even know where to start. And then what are the top two things that you really need for you right now? So I'm going to give you a moment to think that through. And while you're doing that, I'm going to take a look at the chat to see what everyone's sharing. So I'm seeing some things come in, and thinking about how you can balance job searching, how you're going to explain that you're a caregiver and what that means, and some of the benefits of that too with the skills. Really building a schedule is a need for people. Very important to schedule time for yourself, even for a walk, to medicate. I mean to meditate, and also just be really kind to yourself. Yeah, just finding that time is something that a lot of people really need some help with, making that time for themselves. So that's great. Thank you for sharing. And I hope that you continue to reflect on some of this as we move forward. So let's get into some further strategies. So Carla really started us off on the right track. And the number one thing that came forward from there in the beginning was build your own care team, right? Like you need your own support. So I know some of you have already said this in the chat, but it's a good reminder. We've got to be easy on ourselves. You can't always do it all. We're one human, right? Trying to do all of these things. So we've broken things down a little bit and how you can actually get started. And anything that I talk through is available to you after today's session and through a toolkit that we have that I'll mention again. So you want to break this down in identifying some of what we've already started doing in tonight's session. Where is the support actually needed? What are those challenges? Carla also noted that sometimes you got to let things go a little bit and let other people help, and it could be really hard. So we could talk about what that looks like for finding your team, but then also looking at services and support, not only for the person that you care for, but also for yourself, because sometimes we forget about that. From there, once we start to really get things moving in our personal lives and get some support there, that's when we can do that action planning and look at what we can do at work. So here's where we can start. We've got a couple of other resources that I will tell you more about later about getting started as a caregiver. And you can use that guide even if you've been a caregiver for a long time. And the reason is because there's a checklist there that helps you understand where you're currently at. You might have an idea, but how often do you take the time to sit down and say, how am I doing? What do I need? So that can really help you get started identifying where the support is needed. From there, we have to think about the different groups of people that we interact with. we've got our providers, we have our natural support. So providers, I'm sure you're attending appointments and meetings for the person you care for all the time, but what about your providers? Are you connecting with the people you need to support your health and well-being? And I think Carla has a point to add.
Yeah, so Felicia, I actually wanted to share with you here too. So generally, naturally, as a caregiver, I would go to the appointments for my mother, and would think it's just focused on her. But I actually realized caregivers, the doctors and providers are actually there for me as well as a caregiver because they realize that if I'm not physically well, mentally well, then I'm actually not able to provide for my mother and to be able to make sure her health is um as is going as for her health is as supported as it can be. So for me, I actually found the sharing challenges that I was going through opened up doors to other opportunities or programs that are in place to support me as a caregiver. And again, this was just through having those conversations and being very frank and clear and reminding the providers that yes, I'm a caregiver and I'm also trying to work and I have my own personal life. And so I need help. And as you mentioned, I can't do it all. It's working full time and being a caregiver is another full time job, and I'm not supernatural, so I need help. So sharing that.
Thank you for that. I know, and whenever I know for myself within my own caregiving role, as well as when I speak to others, we're never just handed this playbook and here's how to be a caregiver. So that's why at OCO, we've worked with caregivers like Carla to build those tools and hopefully get you started on that path. If we've missed it when you first started being a caregiver, that it's never too late to check in and see how you can make this happen. And of course, everyone's situation is different. There's always going to be similarities that we find with one another in our experiences, but it's so crucial to really learn what is available in your community. I know that can be a really hard job, but that's why we have services like our 24/7 helpline available in 150 languages. So you can talk to somebody, talk to one of our specialists to say, this is what I think I need. What's available out there? How do I even get started with this? And then, of course, through other programs and services as well, we can support you to do that. So really building an inventory at this stage of your, mapping out what you need is important and figuring out what's actually going to be helpful to me. What do the wait lists look like? What can I do in the meantime? We have financial resources that have been built by members of the OCO team alongside CRA and Service Canada in case there's any credits or things that could be really helpful to you that you never knew about before, right? And how to plan that out a little bit as well. And then who's actually available. So I know, Carla, you've got a point about how you can bring in some additional support and communicate that back and forth with even home and community care.
Exactly. So I think for me, that was actually a changing point of being able to communicate that the support I'm getting wasn't necessarily helping me as a caregiver. And so we were able to find a mutual solution that now helps my mother and myself. Um, so would definitely recommend that. And actually, Felicia, I wanted to share one more point as well. I think the same way professionally, at least for myself, I plan my career, let's say 3 years forward, 5 years forward, and there are certain personal goals that I want to achieve professionally. I've also started doing that on my caregiver side as well. So understanding my mother's progression of her condition, I also need to be aware of some of the needs that she will come across 3 years from now, 5 years from now, and the wait lists that come with some of the services that she'll need. So I think it's really important to sometimes stop and not just think, okay, professionally, this is where I want to be, but also take the step back and think, in order for me to be successful, what do I need to put in place now for my loved one to get those services at that time?
I love that. That's so key, thinking about those next steps for both your career as well as the needs on the caregiving side. And that actually flows really nicely too into that next step that we talked about. So once we map this out, once we think about future, how can we now take all of this and move it into the workplace to think about, okay, now that I've got things set at home, what can I do at work? And that's when our Working Caregiving, a Balancing Act Toolkit can really come in handy. And again, we've got some steps to help you really go through that, follow through on your plan and anything that you've learned. So Carla did a really great job, so I won't spend a ton of time on this one, but sometimes when we start jobs, we're handed that human resource binder or, the file is sent to us regarding what's available to us, and we don't always take the time to go through that in detail. So that could be some place to start, and that's where you're going to see any policies or procedures that could really help you in your situation and any type of programming that's already there so you can start thinking about what's best for you. Excuse me. And from there, you can use tools like our decision aid tool in the toolkit to assess your options. So now that you're getting a sense of what's there, what do I need, how can I start to make some really concrete suggestions and prepare for a conversation with my employer? And so you can use this checklist to say, okay, if these things are available at work, how can I make sure that that's actually going to make a difference? Is this going to work for me? Is this going to work for my employer? And Carla, I know you talked about that as well. You've got to think about both sides, how it's affecting yourself, your workplace, your employer as well. So I think this can be a really helpful tool. I know I found it helpful to work through what could be possible, especially if you have times when an emergency comes up, something unexpected happens. And for those that don't have the option of that flexible work, we talked about this before, there's still things that you can think about, right? So if you can have a space, I know this is an example that I give quite often in sessions, but it's one that's worked for a lot of people. If you've got to be on site, sometimes your mind is elsewhere because you're worried about what's happening at home. And I think all of us could relate to that. Even if you have a space that it's agreed upon that you can go and make a call when you really need to check in at home, or if something's coming up, that could be one thing that you put in place when you've got to physically be there. And then the other thing is working with your team. I mean, Carla talked about how when you speak to others on your team, they say, I'm a caregiver too. Or, wow, I didn't realize I'm a caregiver. But as I listen to you explaining that, that's me. I'm doing that as well for my parent, for my spouse. You could actually have a bit of a backup plan to support one another in case something really urgent comes up in your caregiving, and know that you don't have to worry about the pressure at work. You've got support with one another. Carla, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I just want to share it's again about normalizing caregivers in the workspace. There's so many of us out there, and it's just not openly spoken about yet. But I think that's the importance of us really speaking up, sharing some of the situations that we're going through, and if you feel comfortable, even sharing with your team. So from my own personal experience, I've actually shared with my team some of the needs and kind of changes that I have with some of the care for my mother. And I found a community of support that is allowing me to be successful at work and also be able to, when I need to step away, be able to step away and not be worried about some of the items that I was leading or responsible for because I know someone else has my back. But again, a big part of that has just been opening up and having that conversation because people cannot be empathetic if they don't know what you're going through, if they don't understand what are some of the challenges or needs that are happening. And 'cause and the situations can be ever changing. So it's really important to just have those conversations. And if you don't feel comfortable sharing with the team, then even sharing with your manager so they're aware as to where you're at.
Absolutely. And I think you touched on a good point. Everyone's comfort level is going to be different. The dynamic can be different in various workplaces. And the other side of that is privacy. How much do you want to share? Are you comfortable sharing for yourself, that privacy piece, but also protecting the privacy of the person you care for, right? So things like sharing condition and that sort of detail may not always be something that you both want to do, but there's definitely a way to still have these conversations. And it sounds like you've really been able to do that on your team. And I know I've had the opportunity to do that with OCO. We work really hard in thinking about that team approach, how we can support one another as we have these needs come up in life. So once you do all of this, I know it's a lot and it can be daunting. So it might take time. And again, just be patient, right? It might take us some time to make this happen. And it's really about building a culture together within your workplace. And that takes time as well. Once you're ready, here's some tips for how you can actually start to go into the discussion. Now, when we were building the guide, employers across the province actually helped us come up with these tips because we said, how can caregiving employees be successful when they come to you with some of these things? And so it's really about planning ahead, like we said, booking a time, keeping your message simple, being realistic about the needs. And I know Carla, again, did a great job of overviewing that. And even just being patient with them as they think about how they could support you, being open to some other ideas that your employer or the team might have to better support you. You might not get everything that you go in looking for, but maybe there's something else that could work really well. So being open is super key. And then, of course, making sure that any agreed upon changes are in writing and that you follow up on that too. From there, this is how you can start to really implement things. So we've got the key responsibilities work plan within the toolkit. That helps you lay out what you're currently doing, any changes that you've come to agree upon with your employer. From there, don't forget to reassess. Maybe you need to book a review of all of this in a month, 6 months, a year, right? Have some opportunities to sit down and say, is this actually working for myself and others? And what are some changes that might be needed too? We also know that caregiving can change throughout time. And so being open to reassessing is also something that you should really consider alongside your employer.
And I think that's a big part. It's just being open to reassessing. I think, as I mentioned before, the needs are changing. And so sometimes I know, at least for myself, sometimes I get stuck in my own box and think, wow, I'm really struggling with this, or this has been really tough. But I have to force myself to really step back and think, okay, is there an alternate way of doing this? Or do I need to change that accommodation that we had in place, or this alternate way of doing something because it's not working for me anymore? And that's okay. I think it's just remembering that it's evolving, it's ever changing. It doesn't mean that something that's set is set in stone as a caregiver, because we know that things change so unexpectedly. So just being open and flexible and understanding with yourself when it's not working.
Absolutely. I also think that sometimes when caregivers see others make changes at work that are amazing for them, sometimes they'll try to do it and it doesn't work for their situation. And that can be a little tough, but that's when we can keep in mind that it's a different experience. It's different things happening day to day. So it's okay to have something a little different too on the table. So I know we want to make sure we have time for discussion, but I still think that we can just take a minute and have another point to reflect. We've just given you a lot of information. So I want to make sure you're having time to think this through as well while we've got you here together today. So from here, what we've shared with you, or maybe what you've seen from others as we've shared what people are putting in the chat there, are there some strategies that you think from here that could really work for you? What are a couple of things you could try even in the next 30 days? You could start out small, start where you're at. And then what questions do you have? What's coming up for you? Even if some of the strategies we put forward aren't quite landing for your situation, I'm sure we can kind of come up with some ideas together. So I'll give you a moment to do that. And again, I'll take a look at the chat to see what everyone's saying, if you feel comfortable sharing. So we've got some things coming forward here, saying using the toolkit, charting out what the needs are, and then planning for a future discussion with your leaders. And then also someone has a question about caregiver days at a job. So I think Carla or I could speak to that too.
Actually, I guess from thinking of this question, one thing that I reflect on is I know there's a lot of performance reviews coming up, and so that's a great chance and a great time to really open up the floor to have these conversations with your manager and be able to, in turn, align your professional goals with in a realistic way that will allow you to also be successful as a caregiver. So it's just something for me that when I think of two things that I could try in the next 30 days is make sure I have my points for my conversation with my manager coming up.
Absolutely. And I'll get to the caregiver days question in the Q&A. I think that's a really good question. I can speak to that a little bit too. So to your point, Carla, as people are thinking about performance reviews or discussions with your managers, we have another side to this Caregivers in the Workplace program at the OCO. We also do employer engagement. So working caregivers have a toolkit for them, and employers across the province have access to a guide for themselves as well. So the idea is that all of the tools and templates that we have in both can really come together nicely as you have those discussions and plan things out, map it out together We also have e-learning and some tailored training sessions available for employers from a leadership perspective, HR, or managers, so we can ensure that we're helping everyone as they plan for success to support their caregiving employees and as working caregivers strive for success within their lives and within their careers. So wanted to make sure you're aware of that too. So we're wrapping up here so we can get into our Q&A and have some time to speak with you a little bit more. I want to do an overview of the supportive resources that we've got. So we've got the guides for employers. We have the toolkit for working caregivers. Again, those templates and different assessments that we've got in there could really help you as you think through all of this. We've got our 24/7 helpline. You can access chat Monday to Friday for that as well, but the phone is available every single day. Free direct to caregiver programs at OCO. Again, if you present with a need that would be better served within your community, we help navigate to that. We also do a lot of information sessions like today with other key partners across the province and the community and with other organizations. And we have opportunities to really learn too from people's experiences and help employers understand what people really need. And again, in a lot of our guides and toolkits, we make sure that we've got workplace standards from Canadian Standards Association or the International Standards Organization, any research findings coming through regarding latest trends, insights, legislation. I mentioned our Spotlight report earlier as well. We try to make sure that that is incredibly accessible to everybody so you can get that big picture, and sometimes it can really help you as you think about what you need to. I mentioned a couple of toolkits, so I know that you have access now to the one for working caregivers, but there's also a couple of others I think a lot of you might like, especially when I saw comments around scheduling, documenting. We've got the healthcare journey binder where you can put everything that's going on for the person you care for. You could also use it for yourself too. And you could keep everything straight in regards to the different services that you're accessing or appointments that you're going to. Keep it all organized there. And then the I Am a Caregiver toolkit that many of you may have already seen before, that has that checklist regarding checking in with yourself. How are you doing? What do you need? And of course, we've grown really quickly over here at the OCO. We have a number of free programs and services available to you. So this just gives you a sense of what you can access after today, and we could even keep that conversation going. If you're on a support group, if you're doing one-to-one peer support, you can keep this going, and you can find out some other strategies and ideas that are coming forward. So I want to thank you, Carla, so very much for joining me today. It's been so nice presenting with you and connecting on this. I know I have some really great ideas that you've now shared with me and others to act on, so I'm excited about that. And we now have an opportunity to move right on into our Q&A period. So I will be checking in here to see what questions people have come up with. Thank you, everyone, for listening and joining us tonight. Okay, let's take a look. So one of our questions is, does anyone have experience caring for more than one person? The participant says, I was able to balance caring for my mother with MS, but recently my father with Parkinson's and signs of dementia has really declined, and managing both of their complex cares is really difficult. That is such a good point. So maybe I'll start there. And I just want to say that there are a number of people who are caring for more than one person. One thing that we're seeing is that across regions, a lot of people are caring for both of their parents at the same time. It could be age related, it could be other things that are going on, or maybe you're caring for a parent and a spouse, a parent and a child. So definitely you could start to feel really stretched. And one thing that I hope, and I'm sure others, if they have ideas, will share it in the chat and I could bring that forward, is that you really take a look at, is there anyone else to support? And I know that could be a hard question and not everyone's got a ton of people ready to jump in. But if there's anyone that you could even get to help with groceries, to Carla's point about thinking about meal preparation, when it comes to dementia, signs of dementia, there's the local Alzheimer's Society that could be really helpful in navigating the system with you and your father and mother. Carla, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, so I was going to just add on to that. I would say I think it's really important to take a look at activities that you're able to offload. So whether, yeah, that's like meal prepping program or even grocery delivery or even like medication delivery from your pharmacy, little things that might not seem like a lot. You might think, okay, I'll just go to the pharmacy. It's 5 minutes, but those 5 minutes add up over time, and they really they can really free up your time. So I would recommend starting that way. And then the other part too is just looking for community support. So whether that's day programs in your community that allow you to have a day for yourself, or exercise classes, or online classes, like so I would really just say exploring what's available in your community, in your space, such that you're still able to get that time for yourself, because that's a really tough situation to be in.
Those are some really great ideas. And that actually answers the next question that came forward from a participant, just saying, how do I find community? I need help with my loved one, but there really is no family to help. So again, like to Carla's points, looking for what's available to you there. I mentioned our helpline can assist you with that. We've got our one-to-one peer program at OCO. We've got our online support groups. Carla also mentioned that if you're on Facebook, sometimes there's some really great groups there too, where you can connect with others going through something similar. So there's some ideas there on how to find that community. And if you don't have anyone else to support you, what are the home care services that you may already be connected with? Can you connect with your care coordinator to see if there's anything else that you might be eligible for to free up some time for you to do some things for you as well?
I was going to share as well something that I recently found is there are usually associations or organizations for different diseases or disorders. So, for example, I found the Canada Parkinson Society, and through them, I found caregiver groups and just events that they have going on, and even a Facebook community. So, I would say that's a way to get started as well. It's just, and it might be easier to relate to people who are going through very similar situations to what you're going through.
That's awesome, Carla. Thank you. Our next question here is, I'm really worried about returning to work as it's a new role. Not sure if I have the bandwidth to learn and stay focused. Are there any ideas? I know, Carla, you're gonna have some great ideas, and I have one that I'll just throw in. And for me, if I'm starting to feel like there's a lot of needs, and maybe I have a new project coming up that I'm working on at OCO, right away, I start to think about the scheduling of that, because that's how my brain works. I know not everyone's does, but that can help me say, okay, I'm gonna ask my dad to help out with this week. I'm gonna check in with my aunt to see if she can check in with my nanny and make sure that she has what she needs this week. So just planning ahead and seeing where you can make a little bit more time and carve out some hours in the day when you know that you're not going to check on the phone. The person you care for is okay. You're going to focus on work.
I think those are great suggestions. And to add to that, I would probably say I think it's really helpful to break things down. So when you think into I have all of this to learn and I'm going back, it might be really overwhelming. But if you break it down into okay, this week I'm gonna focus on learning this part. Next week it will be this. And even be understanding with yourself, because we know needs are ever changing, and you might not accomplish everything that you were hoping for that week, but maybe the next week you will accomplish that and even more. So I think it's just breaking it down and having realistic goals for yourself. And then also going back to the communication. So again, communicating with your team, communicating with the manager that you'll be working with, or the individuals who will be supporting you on this new learning, on the new learning that you're going learning of a new role as you're going back to work, because they might not be aware about your needs, they might not be aware about some of the concerns that you have, but communicating that across might lead to some solutions that you can collaborate on together, and then in turn allow you to feel a little bit more supported and less anxious and stressed about this new role that you're heading into.
Thanks, Carla. So we have a few more questions, and I'm going to do a bit of a quick run through to make sure we get people what they need, and then we're going to do a wrap up. But I know one question that we did want to get to was, what do caregiver days at a job look like? So of course, this comes down to a lot of different factors within the workplace. Sometimes it looks like personal days. So it's outside of your vacation, if that's something that you're offered at work, or any other type of benefits, where anyone could use those specifically for caregiving. And the whole idea behind it is, even if you have one or two of those a year, that means that you're not using your personal vacation days focused on caregiving, you can still have those freed up. And I know there's a number of workplaces that have put that in place. And so that's just another option that sometimes employers want to look at, how to better support the caregivers on their team. And also there were some questions about, are these toolkits only for the provincial level? What about nationally? So we do sometimes work with organizations that are national in focus. There are other organizations out there, but ultimately, like, we are able to provide information that could be relevant to anyone. There's organizations like ours that do very similar things in different provinces. So if someone comes to us and they're in a different province, then we make sure to connect them with any other supports that could be there so they could access similar supports. But of course, anybody could access our resources and our tools and make it relevant to their workplace. It's just the legislation might look a little different province to province. And there's also questions about, do any of these toolkits have specific information for activities for seniors? So we keep it very broad to make sure that all caregivers can access this, but we do have resources on our website that speak to caring for older adults. And if you needed something specific, that's where our helpline can assist you as well. And then the last question was, does all of this information apply to rural caregivers? This is such a crucial point, and we want to make sure that no matter where you're living in our province, that you could find relevance within our resources and services for you. So definitely that is something that we consider is location. Not everyone can easily access things. Not everyone has internet or a computer. So we do our very best to make sure that we can serve you no matter where you are, and that any tips that we're putting forward can hopefully be relevant where you are living. So thank you so much for these amazing questions, the dialogue that we had today. We're going to make sure we share the resources with you and everything that we've put forward in today's session. Carla, thank you again. And thank you so very much to everyone for joining this evening. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining this evening. And I hope some of the information shared today was helpful.